work from home, their pay will no longer be based on the number of hours they've worked because that's difficult to monitor. So dalawa yung klaseng empleyado nyo ngayon. Those who will be reporting on-site operations that means papasok sa campus, they would still be paid based on increments of time, that 8 hours a day. So they should be paid based on hours rendered. Work from home, therefore, they would only be paid if they are able to meet the output that is required of them. So sa kanila ngayon ay output-based. Kung wala kang output sa pinag-usapan natin, hindi ka namin pwedeng sweldohan. So if you want to be fair, no? So kahit ilang oras niyang gagawin yung trabaho niya, bahala siya. But at the end of the week, you should have submitted this report, so to speak. Okay? We have a question from Ruel and Grace Ramos. No? Follow-up question to Ma'am Gemma. What is the legal basis of what you said if they are already tenured about the janitor only being paid according to the number of days worked? That is within the framework that has been set out by DOLE. If you will try to see, wala siyang diminution of benefits because hindi ko naman binawasan yung sweldo niya nang hindi appropriate dun sa kanyang trinabaho. So it would be illegal. This would be diminution and illegal if she worked 5 days, binayaran ko lang siya ng 2 days. But kung 2 days lang siya nagtrabaho, binayaran ko siya ng 2 days, that's really legal. Okay. Okay. Sige. You can just press the Q&A and then I'll be able to call you and answer your questions. Okay. There is also a question here. If you do a temporary layoff, that means walang sweldo, are you going to temporarily suspend also other benefits? Technically, you can suspend everything you're giving to the employee. Alright? You can do that. Kasi technically, they're not working with you. But perhaps, this is now trying to marry yung humanitarian consideration. Hindi kita sweldohan, but I will give you certain benefits. Like for instance, if you have medical benefits, it would be good to continue giving them medical benefits. At least, that gives them some sense that they are still part of the school. But legally, you are not bound because they are temporarily laid off. Alright, so parang dumami yung tanong. How do you monitor the output sa work from home? You ask them to submit a weekly report, but it has to be vis-a-vis the agreed. So normally, before the week starts, nag-agree na kayo na for this week you should be able to do this, the following reports, etc. And then Friday, kailangan meron kayong reckoning na nagawa niya yung lahat. Ito yung sabi ni Ma'am Loida Esmundo, may legal basis po ba yung compensation ng work from home scheme? Yes, no, that is already contained in the telecommunicating law which was passed last year. So those who are working from home will get their benefits as if they are working physically inside the campus. However, the basis of the compensation may change, but no change in salary. So for instance, I am receiving 30,000 now, I work from home, while I'd be paid 30,000 based on my output, I will be getting the 30,000 provided I have an output. Yun po ang bago dyan, but walang decrease sa kanyang sweldo. Alright? Okay. Sige. Parang wala na muna mga tanong. Okay. Ah, parang dumami yung tanong. Okay. I'll be giving you a different ID this afternoon. Okay. Will there be overtime pay for the work from home? There will be no overtime pay anymore because they will not be paid based on the work hours rendered, but on the output. So they can do it at night, so you don't have to pay them extra. From Miss Carino, we have new teachers who have signed a 2-year contract. Can we end their services at this time of crisis? Will there be no labor problem? The basis of the contract, I don't know your contract, but normally I would advise that when you have a contract, you have to set the preamble that your teaching load is dependent on the number of students. Because even if you are tenured permanent, if the school has no load to give you cannot force the school to give you the load. So the question now is, can you pre-terminate the contract? The contract may be pre-terminated with the understanding that talagang walang pwedeng ibigay sa kanyang load. The other consideration you can do is you can keep the teacher but on reduced load. Part-time lang pero full-time pa rin yung kanyang status. Right? Okay. There's another question here. What about teachers with overload of more than 24 units? My advice is for you to reconfigure your policy now in terms of loading. Because if you will have decreased number of students, you may have to forgo yung overload so that you can give your permanent faculty enough load. So my own sense is that for you to keep your permanent faculty, you may have to suspend. You may have to suspend your overload policy. Another question from Ms. Carino. We have employed substitute employees, clerical, from March to April, but have not reported to work due to the pandemic. Should they be paid even if they have not worked from home? Well, ma'am, you are not obliged to pay because they did not work and there is really no output. So they would fall under no work, no pay. Okay. Okay, let me just go back to the questions later and then so that more or less we can cover everything. All right. So this is impact, no, and this is important. This is an important valuation that you will do, identifying what is the risk level. So the risk level is high, medium, or low, and the computation would be the probability level times the impact level. So this is the table, which I hope I have also included in the template that I provided. No? So if the probability is 4 and the impact level is minor, that's 1, you just multiply 4 times 1 and then that's equals to 4. You have that in the template. I failed to put it here, the range, to determine whether it's low, medium, or high. So if the probability level is 3, okay, if the probability level is 3, okay, and the impact level is 4, okay, so you multiply 3 and 4, that will give you 12. 12 would be high. So an example I gave you earlier was yung pandemic. I think the pandemic, considering the history, the probability is unlikely, but the impact might be catastrophic. All right? So it is medium because there is already the threat of you might stop operations. So this is important. Anyway, it's in the template, and you will be able to make the computation. Okay, so why is this important to know the measure? If it's low risk, you might have to report this to the president, okay, or the direct or head of the school, okay, in summary form, if your office is responsible for that. If it's yellow, you report it to the president, and you may have an option of reporting it to the board, but this time there has to be a prevention and mitigation plan. And if it is high, it's mandatory that it's reported to the president and the board. So, dun sa medium, option yung board, pero dapat may prevention and mitigation. Pag high risk, mandatory na yung sa board, and there should be prevention and mitigation plan required. So, the resiliency plan will cover yellow and red, medium risk and high risk. Okay. So the question now is, where do we go from here? Given the identified risks and the possible crises that might result to non-monitoring and management of risk, would require what we call in the corporate world business continuity plan. But the bigger context, and I think it is more meaningful, would be looking at the establishing what we call resiliency plan. Okay, so the school resiliency plan. Let me briefly talk about, so that we are on the same page, briefly talk about in this current situation, or in whatever crisis situation the school might find itself into. The first question, so that you can have a resiliency plan, would be, how do you ensure continuity of learning and teaching? I guess much have been discussed about this, and I think what has become popular is the flexible online learning learning platform. I think the question lang here is, how do you nuance that at the basic education level, if you're talking about preschool, kinder, etc. The second question would be, how do we continue the delivery of academic and student support services? If it's going to be online, again, my question is, what student services, support services are you going to give as well? For instance, counseling should continue. So the mode will be telecounseling. What's going to be the process in telecounseling? You cannot use the same process you do when there is face-to-face counseling. So this is also the best time to re-engineer some of your processes. When you shift to online, because people have been talking about online learning and teaching, and many schools are forgetting about academic and student support services. That's important. They would still need counseling. They would still need other support services by the institution. How will they access that? Will that be made available to them? So you do not copy the process of a face-to-face counseling and then move it to an online platform.
Correct.
Magkaiba siya. Kasi for instance, in the online kasi, yung parents nandun, no? Kailangan din may consent sila, etc. So, maiiba yung proseso dyan. Maraming even the online enrollment, I suppose, online payment would be different. Do not fall into the context of just doing your physical processes and bring it to the online. When you face the new normal, you're now dealing with two processes, and this will be permanent. Processes that will be at the physical campus and processes that would be at the online platform. So if in the physical process, you're talking about 5 steps for this particular service, perhaps in the online platform, you're just talking of 2 steps. Okay? Because technically, online platform should make things easier. Last question would be, how do we continue providing management and administrative services? Okay. This is also where you also, that was redundant, this is also the time for you to look at redeploying your office staff. Kasi yung office staff nyo baka hindi nyo masyadong kailangan ngayon. So saan nyo sila kailangan? Teachers will need instructional support services. And so if I were you, try to identify office personnel who can support faculty. Because if your faculty members will be new in the online platform and some of them are not techie, you may want to identify staff who are techie and can support teachers. So it is critical now that you identify the support staff that will go with the faculty. Why? Because when you start training your faculty for the online learning platform, you have to include the staff so that they also understand. So, again, that's shifting, no? I tell you, you cannot keep the number of employees you have as if you are still working on the pre-lockdown scenario. Things will have to change. So, if you have your HR department, how will you continue providing service to employees online? So then, therefore, you have to think of a virtual employee engagement. How can they access services of HR? We cannot physically go to the campus. So what is the online platform? What is the online procedure for accessing certain benefits, etc.? So these are the important things you need to work on as you try to build your resiliency plan. So how do we ensure the continuity of learning and teaching? Second, how do we continue the delivery of academic and student support services? And number 4, how do we continue providing management and administrative services? And lastly, how do we operate in general given the new normal? We have to be compliant with the DOLE requirement and the interagency task force. The deployment will have to be between 30 to 50% in the physical campus. I have been talking of the physical campus for purposes of seeing the dichotomy. Can we just call the other campus the virtual campus? So you have the physical campus and you have the virtual campus. Okay? So can you move some people in the physical campus and work in the virtual campus? Alright? Your school facilities will not be optimized during this time. Okay? So what do you do with these facilities? Okay? Kaya nga in terms of your response to the new normal, kung may problema tayo sa budget, dahil hindi naman mapapakinabangan yung mga facilities and infrastructure at this point in time, you may want to suspend capital expenditures. Capital expenditures are expenses that are huge, and normally it is directed to physical plant, to facilities, to equipment, etc. You may want to rechannel that to other support plan for faculty and staff in terms of moving towards the online environment. So what can we do now? Okay, this has been said, and I'm sure you're familiar with the continuity of learning. I use blended learning. It's both synchronous and asynchronous platforms. Okay, now cash flow problem. There should be no tuition fee increase. That's one. And therefore no salary increases. Two, you have to reduce school fees. Your traditional miscellaneous basic fees and school fees will have to be revisited. Which fees should not be paid by the students because they will no longer be reporting to the campus, at least for quite some time. So you have to identify. This is what I've been telling you earlier on. The opportunity here is that education can be made more accessible by you because of reduced fees. Okay? And if I were the parent and wala naman akong laptop, wala akong ganito, then because there is no tuition fee increase, there are reduced school fees, then I can rechannel my own budget so that I can buy the necessary equipment for the on-learning platform. Remember, as we shift, and this is important, you have to engage parents right now. Because once you move sa online platform and looking at bringing this at the basic education level, the role of parents and guardians will be huge in this endeavor. So they have to be part of the conversations now. And you have to define the responsibilities of parents and guardians in the online learning platform.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, ikaw lang talaga, wala na.
Next, what is your deployment plan? That means, who will be reporting to the physical campus, who will be working from home. Okay, once that is already allowed. Now, kanina may tanong na tungkol dito, yung how do we pay our employees? If you go for temporary closure or layoff, no work, no pay will be applicable. This is work from home that's going to be based on deliverables. Are you looking at reduced work hours? So instead of 8 hours, 5 hours. Are you looking at compressed work week? If I may just share with you, in Miriam College, we will just be reporting 3 times a week, beginning June. Okay? But what we need is to ensure that employees will get their full pay. They will have to apply their leaves so that they are still compliant with the requirements, so that they get full pay. They will be forced to use their leave. You can have rotation of staff, okay? And you can have separation program. We'll have some discussion on this later on. So the question now is, are we challenged by the crisis of the COVID pandemic or even other crises, or are we prepared? The answer is basically looking at, do you have a system of managing risks? And the proof that you are able to manage risk is your resiliency plan. Let me talk about what is resiliency. In the American Psychological Association, resilience is defined as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, tragedy, threats, even significant sources of stress, relationships, etc., in workplace and financial stressors. In other words, resilience refers to the ability of bouncing back from difficult experiences. So moving forward, as I've said, wherever you find the school placed into in a challenging situation, kung may resiliency plan ang eskwelahan, the school will always bounce back. Okay? But resiliency starts with a resilient mind. So a resilient mind is defined as the ability to confront adversity and still find hope and meaning. Underscore confront. You do not flee, you do not move away from adversity, but you have to face adversity. However enormous the adversity might be, you can still find hope and meaning. And why is that possible? Kasi nga, meron kang resilient mind eh. So that's the ability to bounce back also puts the context of hope and meaning. Meron ka kasing inaasahan kaya you can bounce back In other words, a positive mindset that things will be okay. Things will be better. So it starts with a resilient mind. Okay. So what are the touch points in building an institutional resiliency plan? One is you look at your program. What programs do you have right now? Both academic and non-academic program. You talk about program for students, programs for employees. Okay? So, matatamaan sa program nyo ngayon yung mga student activities. Ano ang inyong contingency plan dyan? Okay? People. You talk about all your stakeholders, your students, your alumni, what have you. Okay? How are you going to manage them in times of crisis? Actually, ngayon ang magandang tanong sa inyo is, are you in constant communication with your people? Ang assumption natin, nag-work from home kayo lahat. How many times do you meet them, at least sa online? Ang prescribed ngayon is, as many times you could meet them, the better. You have to stay connected. They should know what are the plans of the school. If you are meeting once a week now, increase it. Meet twice a week. If you're meeting twice a week, you meet thrice a week. So it is important. Now also, those who are in charge, and to me, yung mga mga empleyado, mga guidance, I think you still have to get connected with students. Just to say hello, kumusta kayo, etc. And hopefully nga sana even during this time, you have already a telecounseling platform. Kung wala man, basta our students, are your guidance counselors accessible to your students now? Because many are experiencing mental health issues also. Look at your processes and systems as well. How adaptable, how flexible are the systems you have right now? How are you paying your employees right now? Is it through, is it manual? Is finance going to, finance people going to your campus to make the payroll? I don't know how you do it. But some are able to do it via remote access. In Miriam, my payroll is under HR. And so payroll now is done through remote access. So we don't have to be there physically, but they're working. So you were saying also you might want to revisit your systems. Physical plan. When you look at the institutional resiliency plan within the context of physical plan, the important point here would be the integrity of your structure. The integrity of your structure. Di ba? Para ang sinasabi ay you look at your building. Can they stand 7, 8 when there's an earthquake? Kung hindi, then you have to do something. Minsan kasi ang kalaban ng Pinoy mindset pagdating sa physical plan. Okay lang yan, hayaan mo na yan, saka na natin siya ayusin. By that time na ayusin mo, wala na yung building kasi giba-giba na. Another critical factor, which is really the basis of your sustainability, would be financials. Okay? When there is a problem in cash flow now, how do you pay employees? Do you dip into your savings? Do you use other funds of the school? But when you use other funds, that means there are certain things that will be affected also in the operations. And lastly, which is the more important infrastructure right now, would be how is your information and communication technology? Are they supportive of online, of the online platform now? So these are the more or less the areas that you have to look into once you build your institutional resiliency plan. Okay? So tingnan ninyo siya, institutional plan, IRP. Pag wala kayo niyan, RIP. Ang mangyayari, rest in peace. Okay. When you look at the school resiliency plan management, okay, ito ang hindi natin nakita, ha? Yung pandemic. Question: what was our immediate emergency response? Did we have one? How did we act quickly? Did we come out with certain protocols inside the campus? Did we have protocols in monitoring people who come into your campus, inside the campus? Second, do we have a crisis management team? This is also an important element in the resiliency plan. You break the bureaucracy. You break the bureaucracy. You cannot maintain the same bureaucracy as before. Alright? Hindi pa pwede yung kukunin ko muna yung recommendation, endorsement, etc. By the time you get to the president, marami nang namatay o marami nang nawala. So you need to form a crisis management team that would have a representation so that when you meet, you can immediately make decisions. Do not follow the bureaucracy of the school in times of crisis. Ngayon, do not follow the bureaucracy. You should have created a crisis management team who would regularly meet. Wala na yung wala yung dito muna, tapos doon muna, tapos doon. Hindi, ito, sa isang crisis management team, nandito na lahat ng decision makers. And then third is, do you have a continuity plan of your operations? Ito, classic example. Nung pumutok yung bulkan ng Taal, lahat ng eskwelahan tumigil. Ngayon, ang tanong natin doon, kung meron lang silang online learning platform noon, kahit pumutok yung bulkan, they would have continued learning. Kung magandang IT infrastructure ng mga eskwelahan doon, they have continued